Welcome back to Fast Freddy RC, and today we're going to start the build process of the newly re-released Tamiya Super Sabre. Now what's really cool about this, I mean you can see it says 2023, is that this kit originally came out in 1987 and it hasn't been released since. And the Boomerang, which is a very similar car, was re-released in 2008 and then again in 2017. This one has never been re-released until now. So this is very, very cool. Now, I'll take you through the manual first, but before we do, I do want to suggest to all of you who are maybe starting this build, get yourself a set of full ball bearings before you do anything. A lot of the parts in here will be metal or plastic bushings, and in order to keep your car working at its optimum, I really suggest that you get ball bearings for it. And because the plastic bearings, they'll end up over time leading to a lot of slop. So I don't really consider this an upgrade as such. I just think you should get these right off the bat. So make sure that you do, so that you can make sure that your kit lasts a long time. So let's go through the manual. Now I'm not going to go through all of these bits. I've done that before in other kits, but I will go down to here. Let's start it off with step one. Step one, charge the pack. I've said this before, with other kits I won't be doing that because until you know when or where you're going to get to, there's no point in charging this right off the bat. You know, your build time is going to be very unique to each and every one of us. So I'll be skipping step one. Then we go into step two, which is attaching the gears. And you can see we're going to end up using some bearings. This is an interesting one. It's called a ball thrust bearing. I don't think I've seen one of those in a kit before, so it'll be very curious to see that. And then of course we're going to put in some more of the gears and the bearings as well. And here we've got some gears as well. Got to grease all of that up, some more bearings. So you can see that right off the bat we're needing to get the ball bearings because this is all going into the gearbox. So again, highly suggest you do that before you start the build. Then for step three, the rear gearbox, we've got to put the two sides together and then put in this piece as well. And then in step four, we're going to be attaching the pinion gear. And by the looks of it, they've actually got a nice pinion guide to help you with that. So it's going to be a little easier to get that grub screw on. Then in step five, attaching the motor, there's some interesting things here because it looks like there are choices for the pinion, and depending on what you use, you're going to need to add or move some of these pieces around when you're attaching it to the gearbox. So they will be dependent on which pinion you put in. So then we move on to step six, which is the gears. So we've got to put these front gears in and again replace the metal and plastic bushings with ball bearings. Then in step seven, we've got this step where we're going to be attaching the gears. Got to do some greasing up and of course more grease and get those into the gearbox. And step eight, the front gearbox, well, now we're going to close it all up and get ready for installing it onto the kit, onto the chassis. Then 9, attaching the rear upper arms. You can see we've got to put these pieces in, which will act like a bumper more or less. And then these are your rear pieces that'll be used for the shocks. And 10, the rear uprights. So these will be on your back end. And we're going to replace the bushings with the ball bearings. And then in step 11, we've got the rear suspension. So we need to attach a number of things to that, including some of these ball connectors. Then in step 12, we've got to attach the rear suspension. So we're going to be attaching that to that rear gearbox. And then in 13, the front uprights. And you can see this is a very interesting design. I've not seen that before, but this is a really kind of a neat way of putting this together. And then in 14, the front suspension. So we've got to attach this to the arms. Then in step 15, front suspension again, we've got to attach the top piece to all this. And I mean, look at all these interesting little screws that are going to attach to all of this. It looks like a pretty sturdy front suspension, so that'd be interesting as we go along. Then in step 16, attaching the front suspension. So we're going to attach all of this to the front gearbox that we built previously. And then 17, it's the chassis. So now we're going to grab our bathtub chassis and start adding all the different pieces that we need in order to attach the front and the rear gearboxes. So then we go into step 18, which is checking the RC equipment, which we really have to do on every kit because we need to make sure that the servo is in neutral before you put on all of the servo sabers. So that's all part of step 18. Then in step 19, the steering servo. So we've got to build our tie rods, get them to the right length before attaching them to the servo. And then 20, we're going to attach the steering servo. And again, we've got to just make sure everything's in place correctly before we attach all of this. And it's interesting because this chassis kind of has a rack and pinion style steering setup, which I've not seen in any other car. I think it's very unique. So that'll be very cool to build that. And then in 21, we're going to attach the rear gearbox to the chassis. Then in 22, we're going to be working on the rear dampers. So we're going to need to pull out the oil and start putting that together. Then in step 23, we've got the rear dampers again, and this is where we're going to be filling the dampers with the oil. So I'll take you through that process. And then in 24, again, rear dampers, we're going to be working on the springs, and depending on the suspension that you would like, that'll obviously give you a stiffer suspension, and then it'll get lighter and lighter depending on what size spacer you use. So that'll be individual taste as well. And then 25, we're going to be attaching the rear dampers. And in 26, we're now going to work on the front dampers and put those together. And then in 27, we're going to be filling the dampers with the oil, getting that all set up. And in 28, we're putting all the springs on. And again, we have choices. So depending on whether you want a stiffer or softer suspension, you'll end up switching these out. Then in 29, we're going to attach the front damper, because remember, this is a monoshock system, which is kind of cool. So we'll put that on. And then in 30, we're going to attach the front gearbox, but at the same time, we need to install the drive shaft that's going to run both the front and the rear. Then in step 31, we're going to be attaching the bumper. Very cool. And also putting on the steering tie rods onto the hubs, and you can sort of see how this needs to look. So we'll go through all that and make sure that they're on correctly. And 32, attaching the stabilizer. This is actually going to be the first car that I've built that has a stabilizer system in it. So that's very cool. We'll put that together. And then in 33, we're going to attach the RC equipment and put everything in place. Now, some of this won't apply because, again, as I've said in another video, we've got a Hobbywing speed controller this time around, so I won't be able to attach it like this. It'll be interesting. I'm not sure what my plan is for that, so we'll look at that when we get to it. And then in 34, we're going to be working with the wheels and putting the tires onto those wheels. And then in 35, we're going to be attaching the wheels to the chassis, and they have a pretty unique way of attaching to the wheels. I quite like it. It's pretty cool. And then in 36, cutting out the chassis cover. So we're going to need to do that. That's the clear piece that sits on top, which is going to protect all the electronics. And then in 37, it's showing you attaching the chassis cover. So we're going to need to do that. And then in 38, there's the battery holder. We've got to put some sponge tape on there, which will help with the battery. And then 39, we're going to install the running battery. I probably won't do this in the build series as of yet because we won't really be finished. We're not ready for it. So again, you can see if they're asking you to put it in 39, but you don't get to this step for quite a while, I don't see the point in charging the battery in step 1. That's just me, but I don't really go for that. Then it shows you prepping the body. Now all of this doesn't matter because you can see making holes. I believe the holes on this, because this has already been, yeah, see how the holes are already in, because this one is a pre-painted and pre-cut body for the Super Sabre, which I think is super cool. Saves you a bit of time. You don't have to do all of this, especially if you're not that good at painting and don't enjoy it. It's nice to have a pre-cut and painted body. So all these steps really don't apply to you for this one because it's already been done. And then in 41, you can see cutting out the body. Well, again, the body's already pre-cut. It's already ready to go. The only thing we have to do is put the stickers on it. So then we go into step 42, painting the body. Again, we're going to skip that. We don't need to in this kit. But in 43, we do need to attach the wing. So that extra piece that's in the back, which I actually didn't understand when I first did the unboxing, that actually is fitting on the underside of here. I'm not really sure why it's a separate piece, but thing is, that's where it's going to attach. And then in 44, we've got the markings, which now we're going to put on all of the cool stickers. And I have to say, those red and black and blue stickers, and I think are going to look super, super cool on that body. So that is step 44. And then in 45, we need to attach the driver figure, but you are going to have to paint him. That doesn't come pre-painted. It's all white, so you'll need to paint it in whatever colors you want. But if you want it to be these colors, I guess you're really getting him to be Harry Hurry Up. Interesting name. So then in 46, we're going to attach the body. Pretty simple. And that is it. So that is the manual overview of the Tamiya Super Sabre. So again, I will be starting this project fairly soon. I've got another one that's on the go as well, but I think this is going to be so much fun. And if you would like to build this with me, please do like, subscribe, hit the notifications button so you know when I'm about to start another step. And you know, in terms of subscribing, it all helps, doesn't hurt, and it will all help the channel grow. So thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, we'll see you in another video.